My name is Peg Alexander and I present weekly current affairs shows broadcasting from Leeds to over 1.3 million people. I'm doing current affairs differently though, because I'm aiming for discussion and exploration of issues rather than argument. I've had over 20 years experience in various guises within the system, so that means I can talk with genuine understanding and knowledge. And I don't ask questions that are accusatory, because I don't want guests just defensively trotting out pre-prepared spin. Instead, my questions aim to really get people talking. And you know what? It's working, because I'm getting some really candid and open replies. Because I think current affairs and politics coverage can appeal to loads of people who are currently turned off and turning off. Now, on the table at the moment, it seems that there are a number of options being discussed by the political parties down at Westminster, through, as you say, from the Manchester model where they're potentially talking an elected mayor, through to Labour's option, they're calling it an English Devolution Act, which to me looks a little bit like a kind of souped up Yorkshire Forward like we used to have, but potentially with a bit more of elections behind it. And they're talking about transport, housing, planning, but as you say, not necessarily tax. How do we make sure that devolution becomes more than just about an Oyster card, you know, a Northern Oyster card?
Really, it's all about money.
Yeah. But it's not just, isn't it, about that people believe when they come forward. It's also about making sure that there are the processes to really learn the lessons from the past, aren't there? And I often think it's very difficult to ask people who are feeling quite under threat, especially when there's such a media furore, to be very open about what went wrong in the past. That's a big thing to ask local authorities and other people to do, isn't it?
I find the blame culture really unhelpful.
Try and take the edge off it, I suppose, over whatever financial pressure or stress.
So does that mean that actually it's not individual responsibility then for how we make spending decisions, that we just have to say, oh, I can't cope, therefore it's all right that I spend too much?
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I mean, what I would say is that...
And of course, all the canals have actually been put out to a charity, haven't they, to run them, the Canals and Rivers Trust, so they're no longer owned by the government, are they?
They have gone on, actually, to a number of separate bodies. The Canals and River Trust only own part of it. And then some of the ports...
So it's a bit like rail then, but on the canals, that there isn't an overall coordinating arrangement. So not only big infrastructure changes, there would also have to be a national policy. Is that what we're saying?
Well, the national policy as such needs...
You've got £200 million worth of cuts to make. I'm assuming you didn't come into politics to make cuts.
No, certainly not.
How does it feel having to make those cuts? How are you making them?
You've certainly got to have a resilience.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that you are a human being and that you do listen and that you do feel. I remember going to a home where we were looking to close down, and a resident there grasping hold of my hand and literally crying and saying, "You mustn't close our home." And I mean, we're all human beings.
Yeah.
I could immediately imagine my grandmother, who was then living in a home, and it really makes you think, and that's good, because that's what needs to happen.
Sadly, we've already lost about 2,000 officers and staff. So that is the situation we are in.
Does that not make you feel kind of quite powerless in your role? There you are, you're responsible for the police. You're the person, you are the people's voice for the police.
Yeah, and I'm going to set a budget now.
Martin Stanley, Leeds Cycling Campaign. You must be dead chuffed about these bike libraries.
Well, I mean, it's obviously good news that anyone that doesn't have a bike can go and get one.
How can you even have a bike?
Well, to temper the enthusiasm a bit, we found that it's not actually lack of access to a bike that stops people cycling. Most people have a bike. Like 80% of people have a bike.
It's true, actually, I've got a bike in the garage and I've got it out all year.
But what stops you going from out on the roads and going?
I was really trying to get my head round. I know you set the budget. I know you can hire and fire the Chief Constable, and last year you did suspend the existing Chief Constable. You've got grants that you give out. You give a lot of grants out to community organisations. But I was really trying to work out what real power. Why is West Yorkshire Police and West Yorkshire different because you're in the PCC role?
Oh, I think the...
No, 2015. We're going to hear about child sex exploitation, about historical abuse cases. Obviously a national inquiry going on, but there are Leeds implications, not least Jimmy Savile working at the LTI. I think if I had your job and was in charge of children's services, those are the sort of things that would keep me awake at night, making sure that you've learnt the lessons from the past.
Our approach is, I'm sure...
So it isn't a decision that's proved popular. There's been a lot of people talking about, but he have made that decision now. I mean, is the question now how we make sure that visitors to Leeds get the best possible information that they can to help them have as good a time as they can when they come here? Yeah. And how are we going to do that?
Well, I think, again, it's...
Facebook, that we've got here people being worried about the cost of extra layers of bureaucracy or democracy, whichever way you take it, and feeling that's not necessarily the best use of money.
Absolutely, totally agree.
But you want a Yorkshire Parliament now,
absolutely,
Richard.
Yep.
So that's going to cost a load more money, though, isn't it?
So if there are real problems delivering that service, then often the alternative for those people is to actually borrow money to tide them over until that benefit comes through. And
doesn't that just mean the onus is more on you because you're ahead of benefits
to a degree, it is,
to make sure that there aren't delays in payments.
And I think there's a real critical aspect around that. I think everybody who works at the benefit.
Actually, what could also be helpful to people is to be more aware of how stress affects them and how stress is affecting their decisions at times like
So Christmas. I need to make sure if I deal my stress by not overspending, I don't make up for it by overeating then.
Possibly, maybe that could be one thing. That could be hard to do at Christmas as well.
Do you remember changeover when the students used to leave? And
well, I've lived through changeover last year. There were every day a new fridge appeared on the street.
It did,
mattresses,
but what we could say, without fear of contradiction, is they were moved. Whereas previously there'd be a backlog and it's...
Is that because we're just not into the habit of putting leftovers in the fridge and then eating the next day for lunch? I'm giving my secrets away here, but...